today. Today we will talk about application of radiation technologies to control populations of insects or rather pests. First of all, I have to say a few words about insects in general. Insects are the most diverse group of animals. They include more than 1 million described species and represent more than half of all known living organisms. They have been living on Earth for over 400 million years. Of course, they play a major role in nature, destroying pests, pollinating plants, and participating in the cycle of substances in nature as consumers. Only a very small fraction of insects in the world, less than 15,000 species, are considered by humans to be pests, meaning they cause harm to people, plants, animals, and buildings. In their life cycle, insects undergo amazing metamorphosis, passing through different stages of development. At these stages, insects look completely different, can live in different environments, in water, soil, or air. The differences relate not only to the external appearance, but also to the internal structure. The biological characteristics of insects greatly affect their sensitivity to ionizing radiation and other factors. When they are in the stage of active growth, for example, caterpillars, they are much more sensitive to any damaging effects than in the dormant stage. The study of the effects of radiation on insects began soon after the discovery of X-rays. One of the first published works was done on tobacco beetles. But radiation entomology really flourished thanks to the works of Heinrich Müller, who discovered the mutagenic effect of ionizing radiation in his experiments on the fruit fly Drosophila. Müller became the founder of radiation genetics, but in fact, he studied not only genetic indicators, but also the biological effect of radiation on insects in general. In particular, he showed that radiation can easily change the survival of insects and their offspring. This diagram shows the ranges of sensitivity of different organisms to ionizing radiation in terms of semi-lethal dose. The lowest semi-lethal doses are typical for mammals, as well as some species of reptiles and plants. As you can see, insects have high radio resistance, second only to bacteria and viruses. The explanation of such an amazing radio resistance and special biological features of insects. From basic radiobiology, it is well known that tissues and organs are more sensitive to radiation when they are growing, that is, when they contain dividing cells. Adult insects are in chitinous shell, which limits their growth. So there are few dividing cells in their bodies. Their growth, like that of other arthropods, occurs in lips and bones at the time of molting. This is reflected in the so-called Dyer rule. These features of the biology and radiobiology of insects must be taken into account when we plan to affect them with ionizing radiation. So, among the huge number of insects, there are species that are annoying to humans. They cause harm to the agricultural sector or are pathogens for humans. Insects, these small creatures, are capable of causing significant damage, both during plant cultivation and during the storage of the harvested crop or products made from it. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, up to 40% of agricultural crops are lost annually in the world due to plant diseases and pests. This is a huge figure. A special danger is caused by the introduction of alien species into new territories where they can reproduce without natural limiting factors. There are many such examples. In Russia, we will know the Colorado beetle, brought to European countries from America at the end of the 19th century. The first beetles arrived on the European territory of the former Soviet Union in the early 50s, and since the mid-70s, populations of the pest have already been noted in the southern Urals. There are many ways of transferring invasive species, but the most obvious and simple is import with fruits or crops or other plant products. After all, today international trade in food products is global in nature. In response to these threats, Phytosanitary control is an obligatory requirement today for international market. And special measures are aimed at protecting plants and plant products from harmful organisms. What methods can be used to achieve this? Basically, as well known, chemicals are used to destroy insect pests. Treatment can be carried out directly in the fields, usually using small aircraft, or today these are drones. Treatment is also required during transportation of products or during their storage time. Preparations are used more often in the form of liquids, less often in bulk form, as well as in aerosols or gases. Depending on the type of pest, different chemical compositions are used. There are also a number of physical methods, for example, temperature effects or ultrasound, but their scope of applicability is limited. Many ideas are related to biological methods of control. This includes infecting pests with diseases or attracting predatory insects, using microorganisms that secrete toxins that are deadly to insects, breeding plant varieties that are resistant to pests, usually using genetic engineering methods, etc. Radiation disinfestation is one of the types of physical impact and has its own scope of application. Insect destruction by radiation can be carried out during transportation or storage of products. Many types of plant products undergo mandatory processing when crossing borders between states to ensure phytosanitary safety. For some types of products, such as grain, both chemical and radiation methods are applicable. But radiation is the only possible tool if we want to remove insects from products such as fruits, dried fruits, cereals, and other bulk or powder-like products. Their treatment with chemical toxins is often prohibited. Let's discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the most popular methods. The main problems with insecticides are well understood. They are dangerous. They can cause mutations, carcinogenic and teratogenic effects. Of course, today we have come a long way from the 60s, when the intensive use of pesticides in the world led to the mass death of birds and diseases of other biological species, and in fact became the impetus for the birth of a global environmental activity. But safety issues haven't gone away. The safety of workers handling the chemicals, the safety of pesticide production, the safety of the environment. When using radiation treatment, any contamination or danger at consuming of processed products is absolutely excluded. Chemical preparations, as already noted, must be selected for each type of insect. At the same time, complete destruction never occurs, because insects are very good at adapting to such effects. Therefore, repeated treatments are required, with an increasing dose of pesticides or more powerful formulas. In response to superpesticides, we have superpests survived. With radiation treatment, such problems are absent. Radiation kills any insects. Since the effect is acute, no adaptation is possible. This means that a single treatment solves the problem of disinfestation. Finally and overall, radiation treatment is much cheaper than chemical treatment. Today, many countries use the technology of radiation treatment of plant products. Phytosanitary safety requirements are international, and a number of countries, such as the United States and Australia, have made radiation disinfestation of imported plant products mandatory. The United States is one of the largest importers of fruit, so irradiation centers operate both in USA and in the territories of their main trading partners. Back in the days of the Soviet Union, powerful gamma units for processing imported grain were installed in seaports. Today, we ourselves are a major importer of grain in the world. In Russia and in our partner countries, with the support of the Rosatom State Corporation, this technology is developing. New capacities are being built, a regulatory framework and human capital are being created. So we discussed the technology of phytosanitary radiation treatment, which is carried out to reduce the number of insect pests in plants and plant products. Now let's consider a unique application of radiation to control pests directly in the environment, in the wild. the sterile insect technique, which has become widely known by now. The idea of the method is simple. In order to reduce the number of pests in the natural environment, their reproductive function is affected, and the number of offspring is reduced. The traditional sequence of steps is as follows. A large number of the target insects are bred in special factories or laboratories. The target individuals are males, so they are separated from the females. There are some special methods for this. For example, in certain thermal regime, only males are hatched from the fly egg method. Then they are irradiated with doses that are not enough to kill insects, but sufficient to disrupt their reproductive function and cause sterility. By the way, the reproductive function is, as a rule, one of the most radiosensitive processes in any organism. Taking the high resistance of insects to radiation, we use here a weak chain. Under irradiation, insect males lose their fertility. The next step is to release the sterilized males into pest-infested areas. As shown in the illustration, this is done using airplanes or drones. In the wild, irradiated males compete with wild males for mating with females. Females that mate with sterile males don't have viable offspring. As insects have very big size of offspring, the absence leads to fast reduction of the next generation. In 3 generations, the population can be reduced to 0. If it happens in an isolated area like an island, pests can be completely exterminated. This method was first used in the early 50s in the United States. At that time, the American farmers were experiencing a real epidemic of an animal pest, the screwworm fly. The main target of this fly is cattle. Flies lay larvae that penetrate the animal's body and feed on its meat, killing the infected cattle within 10 days. As you know, livestock farming is one of the main industries in Texas and other southern states of the United States. The screwworm fly destroyed livestock in huge quantities. The annual damage exceeded $200 million. The supply of red meat and dairy products suffered in Mexico, Central America, and South America. The first trial application of the sterile insect technique was carried out on the small island of Sanibel near the coast of Florida, and then on the island of Curacao in the Caribbean. After 7 weeks, screwworm fly completely disappeared from the island. The use of the method continued. In just 18 months, screwworm fly were eliminated in the same way throughout the southeastern United States. During this time, almost 3 billion sterile males were released from airplanes. The required amount was supplied by a factory that produced 54 million flies per week, sterilized by irradiation. The triumphant march of the sterile insect technique continued in Mexico, from where the flies flew to United States, and then in the countries of Central America, which were liberated one after another. In the end, they stopped in Panama, where they left a factory for the production of sterile insects, which regularly releases sterile males to maintain the barrier and prevent reinfection from the south. For more than 70 years, the screwworm fly hasn't existed on the North American continent. The next application of the method, which is worth talking about, is against the tsetse fly. The tsetse fly lives in Africa, and it is a carrier of dangerous parasites, trypanosomes, which are pathogens in humans and animals. With the assistance of the FAO and the IAEA, the sterile insect technique was first used also on the island of Unguja in Zanzibar. It was very successful, and then large-scale programs to combat the tsetse fly began on the continent, in Ethiopia and Senegal. In large areas, more time and effort are needed, but in Ethiopia, in the southern part of the Rift Valley, the tsetse population has been reported to have been reduced by 90%. The stories of victories over the well-known fruit fly and other garden pests sound less exciting, but in fact, the damage these insects cause to fruit population, to fruit production worldwide, is simply enormous. Control over the number of fruit flies using the sterile insect method has been adopted in many countries. For example, in South Africa, the method helped save an entire industry. South Africa was the second largest citrus producer in the world, but the infestation of plantations with the codling moth threatened to completely destroy this industry. With the help of the sterile insect method, the situation has been corrected, and also the need for chemicals has completely disappeared, which improved quality of the oranges. Another insect that you really want to get rid of is the mosquito. And the reason is not that mosquitoes prevent us from enjoying warm evenings, but that they are carriers of many dangerous diseases, malaria, Zika virus, and others. With mosquitoes, it appeared not as simple and right away. It turned out that males of mosquitoes don't tolerate radiation well. They are weakened, and wild males defeat them. The solution was found when they combined the SIT with genetic engineering. For example, in one study, the gene responsible for the production of pheromones was enhanced in males, due to which sterile males became much more attractive to females. As you can see, many countries have already used the SIT technology against mosquitoes. As it turned out, high doses may not have very good effect not only on mosquitoes, but also on other insects. And an improved version of the sterile insect technique was developed, called the inherited sterility method. In this case, male insects are also grown, irradiated, and released into the wild in order to slow down the reproduction of wild fertile individuals of the same species. Irradiation dose in this case is not very high, so that males obtained are not completely sterile, but their offspring are born sterile. This approach is even more effective than the traditional one, since a large number of sterile insects are obtained from one irradiated male. The sterile insect method was tested for more than 200 species. The main part of them were three groups, shown in the diagram in darker color: butterflies, Lepidoptera, flies, Coleoptera, and beetles, Diptera. The doses necessary for sterilization have been identified. They are not very high and fluctuate in the range from 50 to 400 grays, depending on the species, stage of development, and radiation conditions. To be efficient in large territories, the SIT is used today not alone, but as a part of a special approach called area-wide integrated pest management, which assumes systematic work on taking a targeted pest species under control at large areas. AWIPM differs from conventional pest management of local pest populations in several important ways. First, it focuses on the preventive management of pest populations around the ecosystem, while the conventional strategy focuses narrowly on defending a valued entity, crop, livestock, people, from direct attack by pests. Second, it requires multi-year planning and commitment, and an organization dedicated exclusively to implementing this strategy. It tends to utilize advanced high-tech technologies, among which the SIT is taken as a main approach, whereas the conventional strategy tends to rely on traditional low-tech tactics and tools that can be reliably implemented by non-specialists. The sterile insect technique is one of the most environmentally friendly methods of pest control ever developed. It has been called the greatest achievement in entomology in the 20th century. The main advantages of the method are that it acts exclusively on those insects against which it is applied, without affecting other species. This is a huge difference from the traditional consequences of using insecticides. Biological methods that are fashionable today, such as modifying the genetic code of insects or introducing predatory insects into the environment, raise certain concerns due to the difficulty of predicting their consequences in the long run. The sterile insect technique is today the basis for the implementation of comprehensive pest control programs around the world. So today we considered how radiation technologies can help us to control pest populations. We talked a bit about the significance of insects in nature and their very high resistance to radiation, known how ionizing radiation is applied to maintain biosecurity and harvested crops quality, and also considered a unique method, the sterile insect technique, which has shown stunning success in the fight against many undesirable pests and occupies an important place in the area-wide pest management programs.